as of today, the G7 summit, which was located in Biarritz, France, is now at an end. Donald Trump has officially come back to the United States after talking with 7 countries plus the EU about trade as well as significant other issues. This G7 summit was definitely full of a lot of dramatic um, a lot of dramatic moments. Definitely a lot of political intrigue, especially with what actually occurred outside of the G7 summit. Now, as we already know, France has been dealing with a lot of crap for the last whole year. And this has been part of the stem of the Yellow Vest protest movement that has been plaguing the country. There has been a few protests that were organized out within the city limits, but a lot of police were I wouldn't say confrontational, but there was definitely some conflict between the protests as well as the police. There were even cases where there were some vehicles that were set on fire, and again, this all has resulted from the massive unpopularity of Emmanuel Macron, the French president. And honestly, I'm surprised that he's still in office, because considering how bad his popularity rating is, especially with how bad the country of France is doing economically, culturally, that sort of thing, and even the Yellow Vest movement, I'm still surprised that he's going on to be president. It hasn't resigned yet, because all of this is doing is just adding fuel to the fire. It's just creating more discontent for and more support for a party such as the National Front and of course France and other politicians such as Marine Le Pen. But I digress. That's just only one moment that has been a dramatic effect when it came to this in the summit, because considering again the massive unpopularity Emmanuel Macron, this only reflects bad on him. But there's a lot more to get into. For one, there's this whole bromance between Boris Johnson and Donald Trump. One time when during one of their talks when they were about to have Brexit breakfast, I believe it was, they were talking about how they were planning on making a new trade deal after the possibility of a no-deal Brexit, something which I support in my honest opinion. And they just kind of had a good laugh. Definitely had a good talk and everything. And they just act like buddies. Hell, if you would just put those two guys side by side, I doubt not many people will know too much difference. In fact, I'm pretty sure that the only reason people will realize the difference is one of them has a British accent. That's how similar they are. And of course, let's not forget about many of their positions being more nationalistic as well as populist when it comes to their respective countries. So yeah, that's definitely getting a lot of traction, especially as realizing the whole issue with the possibility of a no-deal Brexit looming, as well as Great Britain is definitely going to need to figure out another means of trade. And this time, and it's definitely going to restart talks between the United States and Great Britain in order to develop a trade deal between the two countries, so that way, the UK is not as affected from a possible recession of a no deal Brexit. Although personally, I don't believe that's going to happen, especially with how 2016 occurred with the UK Brexit deal, where people were believing that people supporting Brexit, it would just cause a collapse of the economy or a loss of GDP and shares, when in fact it actually did the complete opposite. So, in all honesty, I think that the UK is definitely building a good plan, especially if there is any sort of bad situation that might occur. They definitely have the United States side with them in any looming scenario. this leads me to another trade deal that I have to talk about between the United States and Japan. Mainly, this is a simple trade about farming as well as corn, those kind of resources that are that Japan wants from the United States, and a few other concessions made by Japan as well. But the bigger issue about this trade deal is what's actually the result of it. Or well, let me explain. As we already know, there's been a trade war between the United States and China. It has led to massive tensions between the two countries as a result of of China's devaluing of currency, and of course just the two countries just being confrontational. Hell, just last week, China placed new tariffs on American products, which would cost about between 25 to 75 billion dollars. And this is only escalating the whole trade war even further, because now it's kind of showing that China right now is a little bit desperate as a result. I mean, after all, with them no longer taking many of the much of the grain or the corn that America produces, other countries such as Japan are definitely open to having that kind of resource, and that's partly what's been going on. It's causing more problems for China than it is for the United States. Hell, Sticks, Hex, and Hammer actually mentioned that the yuan currency collapsed. I don't know how at this point. I don't know how the Chinese economy is still functioning. I really do not. But this definitely shows that China's getting hit. In fact, it's been so bad that during when interviewed by the press alongside Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, Donald Trump mentioned that he talked to China about renegotiating a trade deal, so that way it would put an end to this trade war. At this point, it has managed to have the stock levels rise up like the Dow, but nonetheless, it just shows how desperate China is. Right now, they cannot compete with in terms of tariffs as well as the trade war that between our two countries. They're not that prepared. It's a paper thin economy, and this only shows that they are on a knife's edge. And I think ConCon is partly the result of this. In an indirect way, it's because of a economic crisis that's been occurring in China, and of course it's now involved the yuan collapsing, and of course the trade deal between the U.S. and Japan. So that has been a major move, even though that it's an indirect sort of move against China, and nonetheless is a move that definitely puts China at a greater disadvantage. Now let's see. I already talked about oh yeah. Two more things before I end this video. Donald Trump has mentioned that he's planning on. He actually talked to Emmanuel Macron about this, about trying to get Russia back into the G7 summit, hopefully next year. A lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot of people. A lot of these leaders in other countries have been very critical about this. While Trump has been calling for something like this to occur, especially back in 2018 and 2017, these leaders have been adamantly opposed to it, and it's partly for good reason. Although I understand Trump's reasoning on wanting to try to get the Russians back into the G7 summit. Ever since their takeover of Crimea, which is considered an illegal act, they were kicked out of the G7 summit. At that time, it was known as the G8 summit because Russia was a part of that. But now, uh, there's been a major amount a high there has been a high level of tensions between just the entire continent of Europe against the Russian Federation over the whole issue that's been occurring in the Ukraine. And that has led to a lot of people just being very vocal against Russia. A lot of major countries. Yet Donald Trump is suggesting that we should invite the Russian Federation not only to try to figure out new trade deals which would help benefit not just Europe and the United States but the entire global community, but also to maybe try to find a way in order to resolve the crisis that's been going on in Ukraine. In all honesty, I support that. Because right now it just seems like it's been a major status quo and not much has changed. In my honest opinion, there's still the Russians still have a hold of the Crimea, and they're still supporting the rebels in Donetsk. And of course, the Ukrainians are managing to hold their own, but it seems like something similar from World War I. Neither side is really gaining much territory or ground. So I think the best way in order to deal with this would be to find a new outlet in order to try to ease tensions within the region and hopefully get a better solution. Finally, and this is honestly my favorite one because I actually learned about this when I was in one of my classes earlier today. I was in my foreign relations class, and my teacher actually mentioned about what Emmanuel Macron did in terms of with the Islamic Republic of Iran. When, in a surprising move, Emmanuel Macron invited the foreign minister of Iran. His name is Javad Zarif. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that name correctly, but in Emmanuel Macron's mind, he did this in order to diffuse a tense situation with the Iran nuclear deal, as well as the occurrence that has been happening in the Strait of Hormuz, which, as you already know, the United States and Iran, as well as many other countries, have been very critical with Iran due to Iran just harassing many of these trading ships that have been going in and out of the Strait for a while. And it even nearly led us to a war, or at the very least a strike, which according to U.S. officials would have led to 150 Iranian dead. But I'm digressing on that point. He specifically did this so that Javad Zarif, could talk to Donald Trump in order to find a way to ease tensions. And this was, honestly, it was a risky move. I don't think that it was something that definitely needed to happen. In fact, I think it only makes the rift between Emmanuel Macron and Donald Trump grow even wider. It used to be pretty good, but ever since they made Emmanuel Macron and Donald Trump made had some differences, especially how they one supports populism and now the other one, which Emmanuel Macron, who disguised himself as a populist, but is now being more establishment. It's creating that rift, and considering that he made this surprising move, it's not going to it's only going to strain that relationship further. Nonetheless, Donald Trump has said that he's willing to talk with the Iranian government about defusing these tensions. Because in all honesty, if he said no, while he would still have a good hand, this will not look good for Donald Trump in the international community, because Iran would, at this point, Iran would be the one that's laying out an olive branch, and Donald Trump would be the one that slaps it away. So, it honestly, Donald Trump had no choice. Hopefully, this does lead to something good. But nonetheless, this is not going to bode well with the relationship between Emmanuel Macron and Donald Trump. Whew. That is a lot of drama that just occurred within 2 days. I don't know how anything's gonna top this off. Maybe the next G7 summit that might occur, that will occur. Maybe the Russian Federation would come in, or something else. I don't really know. But nonetheless, there's been a lot of dramatic moments that have occurred during this G7 summit. And I don't know how this is going to play out, but it definitely sure looks interesting. My name is Noah Meehan on The Arc Truth. Please post your comments down below, like this video, share, and subscribe. Also, if you have any questions about how I make my videos, as well as how I speak and what I should say, please let me know it either down in the comment section below or just directly message me above. Thank you.
Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountain.